In 5:15, I'd like to call the Monday, February 3rd, 2025 Board of Public Works meetings order. We stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
Okay, then I'd look for a motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Barrington, seconded by Mr. Ritchie to adopt the agenda. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda carried. Public input. No public input, seeing none. Looking for approval of the minutes. Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, seconded by Mr. Herder to approve the January 6th meeting minutes. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Is also carried. Wastewater treatment plant updates. Mr. Garsky?
All right. I'll be filling in for Ben. So right now they're prepping for the laboratory audits. Him and the full staff has been going through the lab, all the procedures, making sure they're all on the same page, because it's pretty much like a quiz once they come in. How do you do this? How do you perform that? Through this whole audit. So they've been prepping for that. We received proposals for the sewer cleaning and televising this year. We actually had all 4 bid this year, which was nice. The bid tab came in with Speedy being the low bid at $20,929. This would cover 22,310 feet, mostly starting from the river, going to the south. I believe the cutoff was Beacon Street. Pretty close bids between 3 of them, especially for the cleaning and televising portion. We know we're going to run into maybe some areas of root intrusion in some of the locations, but they all pretty much bid the same for heavy cleaning after the 2 initial passes that they do in their primary cleaning. So that wouldn't alter it as far as after you get the total. In Ben's budget, there is $42,000 set aside for this program. And we have Crane came into town. I don't know if I brought this up at the last meeting, but we had issues with one of the pumps at lift station 2. Found out that after they pulled it, that the impeller was missing a large piece. Some aggregate got in there and had damage to the impeller. So when they pulled that, got the impeller replaced, they took and set up a bypass and cleaned out that lift station. When they were, before they placed the new one, they didn't want that aggregate to be sitting in the bottom and creating issues, and they wanted to find out what was all going on down there. So they cleaned it out well. Down at the bottom of that lift station, there's a poured bench pretty much all the way around it, going to where the pumps sit to kind of filter all that water into them location where the 2 pumps sit. Well, they noticed in the area where some of the influent comes into the lift station, there was deterioration, and there was some where the pumps run. Some of that concrete had deteriorated. Don't know what the cause is, if it's just from all that water turning all the time and it's starting to wear away. They cleaned it up well, they put it in, the pumps are working great. The amount of runtime for those pumps were cut way down because now they're actually pumping quick. We plan for the next oil change, when they're doing that, we're gonna clean it out again, see if there's any further deterioration of that concrete. We're gonna look into means, if that's the case, of what we do next with trying to seal that bottom up. If there's, I know there's a lot of products out there right now, as far as even like the spray liners that they put in sanitary manholes right now, that's totally seal them off, and it's a rigid compound that they put in. But we'll look at that during the next oil change, which will probably come in 3 months or so.
What does that, I mean, the motors were made? What's made?
There's a clearance that you have for it's adjustment with the coils in that when it's running, and there's a way to adjust that so it's running properly, and that's a technical term in adjusting that gap.
I'd never heard that term before. I was just curious what it was.
Yeah. So that's all on number 2. Whoop. We're still waiting. The attorney, Keith Steckbauer, reached out again to see where we're at with getting any kind of results from August Winters, as far as they're looking into having another company come in and finish that digester up. That's as far as that's gone right now. Still very frustrating through this whole process, but hopefully we hear something soon. And then Donahue continues to work on the preliminary compliance alternative plan, which is, we hope to have in soon to start looking it over, and then that'll be a whole process that we'll work through the board with, as far as what they're thinking, how we need to move forward to meet the 2029 requirements. That's pretty much all we have for wastewater.
Got any other questions from Mr. Garsky? If not, thanks, Robert. Move on to Mid-State Concrete Asphalt Crushing and Removal Agreement.
All right. For this one, out by the dog park, we have a lot of old material that's been sitting there. I don't know how long it's been there since I've been here. It's an area that we'd love to clean up. There's a mixture of some very large concrete chunks, smaller concrete chunks, some asphalt debris, and it's spread out throughout that whole area. And when Mid-State purchased this crusher, they had reached out to us about what we had plans with that site, if we're taking more material or if we're doing anything with that, and knowing that we were kind of starting to look into cleaning up that site, they showed interest in wanting to do all the crushing of this material, both asphalt and the concrete. In return for all that work, they would take the material and clean up the site, and there would be no cost to the city for this cleanup. So in the agreement, the scope of work, it pretty much states that the Midstate would have access to the site at 740 River Road to crush the concrete asphalt debris. Midstate would have rights to ownership of all material crushed without reimbursement of any sort in exchange for crushing and removing all material located at the location as directed by the city. The sole consideration of this agreement is the exchange of materials being moved by Midstate for the benefit of removal of the debris from the city property. So, the agreement obligations for Midstate, they would provide all the necessary labor, equipment, materials, to crush and remove that debris. They would do it in a safe workmanlike manner in compliance with all laws and ordinance. They would have to fill out, if needed, any permits or licenses required to do that work. And then leave the property in a clean and orderly fashion upon completion. Some of that material contains some awful large rebar and metal that they would not be able to crush. They would keep that separate in one pile so we could dispose of it as needed. New London's agreement obligations would be, we give them access to the property to perform the work, and we may, but is not required, to provide equipment and labor to reduce the size of some of the material. So that would be one person running the backhoe with the concrete buster on the back, just busting down some of those really large panels, because they plan on just having, more than likely, just a loader on site, and being able to, the way half of that material sits right now, would hardly take any effort to bust that concrete up so they could fit it in their crusher. We don't have to do it, but if we want to get rid of those larger items, that's the only way that we'll be able to get rid of them.
We could take the buster and bust some of that big rebar too, couldn't we?
Bust it out of there. Yeah, and they'll more than likely, they have a magnet set up on their thing, and some of that stuff that, yeah, extends out to where you know it's in there, then they'd be able to hammer that out to reduce that. The indemnity clause is standard with ours, insurance as well. Term and termination. This agreement shall commence on the date of execution and shall continue until the work is completed. Either party may terminate this agreement upon 30 days written notice, in the event of a material breach of this agreement. So that is pretty much the extent. Does anybody have any questions about this?
Seems like a no-brainer to me.
It'd really be nice to get that set up.
That's what we're talking about for the archery.
Any further discussion on that? None, I'll be looking for a motion.
So allow Midstate crushing.
Motion made by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Herder, to approve Midstate Concrete and Asphalt Crushing and Removal Agreement. Any further discussion?
Aye.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, approve and adopt engineers report and Oshkosh Street plans. Mr. Garski?
Okay, so we'll kind of go through this step by step because this is very important for the assessment process for Oshkosh Street. So we'll just start at the beginning. I hope all of you had a chance just to, if anything, kind of breeze through this a little bit. Of course, this engineer report was submitted on behalf of us, the city of New London. That all primary and final plans and all specifications for this project are on file with the clerk. And we do have those plans and amended plans on file at both locations, the clerk's office and Public Works office, for public viewing. That the following hereinafter is an estimate of the entire cost of the proposed work or improvements, either based upon engineer estimate or based upon actual bids received for said proposed work. These estimates that are in this are based upon actual bids received that we got in the bid process for that project. The following is an estimate as to each parcel of property affected of the assessment of benefits to be levied against each affected parcel. The same is attached here to incorporate herein as a schedule of proposed assessments. It has been determined by the governing body of the aforementioned municipality and the engineer for the municipality that the property against which the assessments are made are benefited from said proposed work, improvements and installation of the same, and that the assessments are pursuant to section 66.07031B police powers, and that said assessments are based upon a reasonable basis as determined by said government body, mainly being construction cost assessments, including actual cost of construction, engineer fees, legal fees, posting and publication expenses. And we'll kind of go over that in a little bit. The proposed project is to provide the abutting property owners with dependable sanitary sewerage collection system and laterals to the building in conformance with the City of New London Ordinance 11.02. Sub 1, lateral to meet construction standards. You'll find in this construction project, there are a lot that are still clay construction and or concrete, and even the ones that are cast iron, the lateral televising that we did on them, they're about half the diameter of what the pipe used to be, and in pretty tough shape. So lateral replacement in the city right of way or easement. The city shall construct the lateral in the city right of way or easement, at which point the property owner is responsible to have the lateral reconstructed and reconnected to the building. The assessed cost for the lateral from the mainline sanitary sewer to the extent of the city-owned or leased property shall be calculated assuming the mainline sanitary sewer is centered in the right-of-way. So this being, in most cases, the sanitary is always in the center of the road. This is not the case with this project. We have it on one side, while there's dual ones, and then by taking one away, one is gonna be all the way to the east side, because there is no option to run that in the center line because of the storm main that exists right now. So with that being said, it is to be equally distributed as if that lateral was in the center of the roadway. As is
I would imagine all these people are gonna get all this information at that meeting next week.
correct. And if this is agreed upon to be adopted tonight, they will all be sent a copy of this. And that's why I'm going over this kind of step by step, just in case you get questioned. More than likely, it's gonna come to me as it's listed in there, you know, for questions. And my letter that will go out with this too will say to contact me for questions. And I've already been receiving some I probably had 8 residents reach out to me already, wondering about the assessment process. So this shall create an equal cost to the adjacent property owned and not lend an advantage to any property owner based upon the actual location of the sanitary main line. The assessment may be financed through the city of New London. That is listed in there, and you'll see that in the final resolution that must be passed by council in order for this to happen, but it is included in this as an option if approved. Sanitary lateral replacement on private property to the building connection. The City of New London sanitary sewer policy requires that the property owner replace their lateral from the city mainline sanitary sewer to the connection at the building if the lateral is found to be in violation of the city ordinance. The city has requested unit pricing for the replacement of the laterals on private property from the project contractor. A summary of these estimated costs have been provided. The property owner has the following option for replacement if the lateral is in violation of the ordinance. And this kind of states the options. Option 1, replace the lateral to the building connection with the contractor hired by the property owner. Or option 2, replace the lateral to the building connection under the city contract. If the resident decides to go with option 1, the property owner shall have 60 days to complete the work upon notification by the city that commencement of the work may begin. This would make it pretty difficult if we're going down, putting in the sanitary main line and you try to do any type of pipe bursting or anything like this. It would be very hard to line that up to have a contractor of their choice to do it. And this will kind of be explained at that public meeting too. The property owner is responsible for all costs and shall not be allowed to utilize city financing for private lateral reconstruction. That's if they choose to go with their own contractor, and they can. It's totally their choice. It's on their property. If they select option 2, the lateral shall be constructed to the building connection as part of the city contract based on the estimated unit cost provided. The contractor may adjust these costs up or down based on the unique circumstances on any given lot. Variations from the unit cost provided shall be identified prior to authorization to proceed. So with what we've seen out there so far, there are going to be many variations because of what we're working around. All the differences that we face, I mean, just about 3/4 of them are going to be a little different. Being short-sighted, long-sighted, having water laterals run at the same time, there's going to be a ton of different options. So it's going to be crucial to go over this stuff with them and let them know that you're going to have a lot of different options, but you're more than likely want to go with the one that's most cost effective, and we'll provide those options. No restoration by the contractor is included in the cost provided except for turf restoration. Pavement, decorative landscaping, anything like that shall be the responsibility of the property owner to replace at their cost. Removal and replacement of landscaping structures, etc. on private property, which may affect the ability of the contractor to complete the work, shall be the responsibility of the property owner. The city contractor's cost to install the lateral may be placed on the assessment roll and financed through the City of New London assessment program, if that program is passed in the final assessment resolution. The property owner shall return and should sign and return the waiver of assessment form to the City of New London Public Works Department. Pretty much is the last sheet of the of this document. Once they sign that waiver of consent, it pretty much states that they're wanting to go with the city contractor to complete the private portion of the work. Now we get to the cost summaries. In the summary for the right-of-way, this is all work within the city right-of-way. We calculated the most expensive option for one reason only. If we run into a lot of scenarios where we're having to use this method and have no choice, to put a lesser amount approach on there and providing that lower estimate to the residents, in order to recoup all fees, you must have that amount on the assessment document. If you do not have that total, let's say we had 2,500 as the total, you could never go higher than 2,500 without going through all the steps again to reassess. These are actual numbers off of the bid document, the 4x12 sanitary Y, 420, live lateral verification, 230 each, or 203 each, and the post-construction lateral televising is 137. And those are all numbers off of the bid. Construction total, the 10% engineering and contingencies, like for the downtown project in 23, we did 20%, only because we were a little more unsure of what we were going to face there. We know we're going to run into things here, but to the extent where we think 10% would more than well cover the whole window if it came to an extreme case. So that provides the estimated lateral assessment just within the right-of-way at 64,1850. The number cannot be larger than this, but it definitely can be close. The estimated for the private portion. So there's the method of CIPP lining, there is pipe bursting, which we talked about, and there is open trench cut. All methods are possibilities here. And these numbers come right off of that bid document as well. They have a sanitary CIPP lining setup cost, $25.45, 4-inch clean out at $420, and a 4-inch lateral at 30 feet, $10 a foot. It's $300, which brings the estimated cost of lining a lateral at 30 feet to $3,265. If it is chosen to pipe burst, the pipe burst setup is $33.60. 4-inch lateral, 30 feet at $5 a foot, comes to $150. The floor drain, $102. The inside clean out with cap, $102. 4-inch bend, $10. The Fernco, $10. Estimated that you're going to use about 3 bags of Redicrete, and the prep to do that, $164. These are all numbers that are on the bid document as well, which will bring a pipe burst to $38.98 for 30 foot. There is also the excavated or open trench, which would be 30 feet at $59 a foot, $1,770. It does cover turf restoration, as it's stated earlier, calculated around $280. The things that come into play here and what have to be considered is where your sanitary lateral runs, what you have in front of your house. Do you have a porch addition where you can't open cut to the front of that house? Do you have landscaping, curbing? Does it go off the corner of the driveway? All of that is a non-covered item if you open trench cut the line of the house. So it says the actual cost of private service shall be calculated using the above unit bid prices and actual footage of pipe required to complete the work. In the case of an excavated lateral, additional restoration costs may be required to restore the private property and are the sole responsibility of the property owner to complete. Does anybody have any questions right now on any of the estimates or where they came from?
This is when you're top, way on the top, very first one.
Okay, the one in the right of way? Well,
Yeah, I believe so. That is that from the joint? I mean, do you pay? You pay from where you start, from the center of the road, right?
correct. So that's why we went with 35 foot if the elevation is low enough where you need an additional rise, knowing that that's a 60-foot right of way. So if you go from the middle, 60 foot, you're at 30 foot is divided by 2. But to get that additional rise cost, you know, if you have to go up 4 foot before you start going across, that's why we went with a 35 linear feet of pipe. Will it always be that way? No, but again, when we come up with that basis, we're worst case scenario on this cost. Any other questions on that portion? Okay, oh,
I was just gonna say on the private side, there's the 3 options. How is it gonna be determined which option is the homeowner's gonna choose? Are you guys gonna choose? How is it together? How are you gonna choose that?
it's together. We'll provide the option layout based off of what they're facing and say, okay, realistically, we're better off pipe bursting maybe the entire length because you're short-sighted. And if water is bringing their lateral across and we can pipe burst down a 6-inch clay without disruption from the curb stop to the house, then that's pretty much, I mean, it'd be way beneficial to go all pipe burst at that portion. It's just, there's so many elements to every property out there. You just can't say, well, it's gonna be around this much and give them that option. Each one's gonna be pretty specific. It's a lot of work up front, but it's only to benefit the residents, to give them their best deal on the bids that we got. Again, the financing aspect of it, that will be covered in the final assessment resolution. Plans and specifications, they're attached to this as well. Well, I will not be sending out the plans because it's a huge document to everybody, but they are available at both windows here at the office. And it covers the public hearing that is scheduled for our council meeting day of February 19th at 6:30. So here is a list of affected properties. You notice some are asterisk that are listed. These are corner lots. There's several that were not identified, and in the public involvement meeting and in the letter I send with this document, it'll state that um, until we have verification that their corner lot comes out to Oshkosh Street. Of course, if it comes out onto a side street and they're not within that project extent, they won't be assessed because we will not touch their lateral. There are some varying aspects of it. When we do the tie-in for a lot of these mains that are coming off of side streets to Oshkosh Street, we could run into an issue where we have to chase that main down a little ways. So we don't want to say if they're close to that connection point that they're out of the assessment area because that project limit might extend the additional 10 foot it takes to make that connection in the right manner. And if we fall within their lateral, then they would be on the assessment roll. And this is the waiver document that's, if they want to be on the city contract for their private portion, they would have to sign off on this and return it. Everybody's pretty much seen the plans and we've went over them numerous times. I just want to make you aware of one minor change here. Let's see. Why am I not going up? Uh-oh, it's catching up.
Did you break it?
Yeah. I just wanted to get to plan sheet 7.
So,
Gotta go way up.
I see sheet 7 is on page 56.
page 56? How's
There
that?
it is.
There you go.
All right. The much talked about intersection of Washington and Oshkosh. You can see how we extended this radius to make the distance for pedestrian crossing at a 37-foot level equal to the width of the street on the east side. We did that for a couple reasons. One, to try to meet code requirement for the pedestrian crossing on this side of the street. 2, it was to add for pedestrian safety for crossing a shorter distance, and it makes them stand out before they're back here standing waiting to cross a 41-foot wide roadway, which any traffic traveling westbound, even though it's a 4-way stop, it kind of sets the pedestrian back. So we're hoping this helps improve pedestrian visibility at this location. We extended it 5 foot before we started tapering back to that 41 feet. So future down the road, whenever it does take place and there's any reconstruction of the street, and more than likely it would go to that 37-foot width versus 41 feet, that it would be a lot easier tie-in. That is the only change as far as the overall aspect of the whole project that we're hoping enhances the pedestrian safety. I did sit and monitor this intersection several evenings with the traffic leaving. Noticed a lot more pedestrian crossing Oshkosh itself versus crossing north-south. But the pedestrians that did and or school traffic that crosses there will have a better advantage as far as visibility. Bus traffic, as far as making that turn or that corner, there was probably 4 to 5 buses that come from that direction and make that corner, and watching them manipulate the corner now, which has a little tighter radius and 40-foot wide, I don't foresee an issue with it. Does anybody have any questions on this? All right, with that, that pretty much finishes up the engineer report and the street plans, unless anybody has any further questions.
Any further questions for Mr. Garski? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Motion made by Mr. Barrington, second by Mr. Herder, to approve and adopt engineer's report and Oshkosh street plans. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are carried. Take a breath, Robert. Here we go again. Approve and recommend to council final assessment resolution for sanitary water lateral construction on Oshkosh Street.
Okay, this is one of the final steps for the assessment process. So everything I pretty much talked about in the engineer's report is covered in here. That the engineer report pertains to the construction of the above described improvements, including final plan specifications. We went over all that. It is for all property fronting upon both sides of Oshkosh Street from the intersection of West Wolf River Avenue to Pershing Street. All corner lots of Oshkosh Street that front and adjoining side street from Pershing Street to Wolf River. So that defines all the properties in the construction area. That the Board of Public Works is authorized and or directed to carry out the work of such improvements in accordance with the engineer's report. And that's why I wanted to go over the engineer's report pretty much word for word, so we're all on the same page as far as what that all entails. The payment for said improvements be made by assessing the cost to the property benefited as indicated in the report. That the assessments shown on said reports are correct estimates and have been determined on a reasonable basis, which they have. They are bid items. The assessment for all projects included in said report are hereby combined as a single assessment, but any interested property owner shall be entitled to object to any assessment separately or all assessments jointly for any purpose or purposes. And here's the part about the payment. That the assessments may be paid in cash in 10 annual installments to the city treasurer. Deferred payments to bear interest at a rate of 1% on any unpaid balance. Installments or assessments not paid when due shall bear additional interest on the amount due at the rate of 1%. And this has to do with the publishing that happens after this resolution is published. Or passed at council. Does anybody, go ahead.
We got their 10 payments. What if a person would want to pay for it and be done with it?
They can,
I didn't see nothing there that says that.
this just gives them the option for the payment plan. But at any time, these can be paid in full whenever they receive their copy of assessment.
The other thing, is there any lead services on Oshkosh?
There is. And water utilities is handling that aspect. And the reason why this has water lateral in the language is because New London Utilities covers everything to that curb stop. And then anything on private, it gives the homeowner the option to be assessed for it through, or gives them that option for that payment plan.
The only reason I question is we don't want to be tearing up stuff twice. We'd like the people, if they have lead services, to do it now, when they can do it all in one shot. From what I understand, utilities
Yes.
is going out and talking to everybody about it.
Yes,
And all the water and the city's work is under by the same contractor. There's not two separate contractors doing this work, they're all under one contract, so. And then like to your other point, you know, if someone wants to do this assessment over 10 years, say they're in their third year of the, 10 years, if they decide in year 3, they want to pay it off, you're done. I mean, at any time you can pay it off.
Chad, have we ever had any issues with the assessment, if people not paying or?
Nope, it goes on the tax roll. So I mean, it's part of your tax bill at the end.
Okay,
So if you're not paying your tax bill, that's part of that process. But yeah, you can pay it off, you can put it on the tax roll, either way, it works out really well. And then the reason why he's got the water side in here too is because utilities can't do an assessments on themselves. We have to do the assessment process. That's why it's piggybacked on us. So we're upfronting the cost, for both the water and the sewer side of things on the city's end. But that allows the homeowners to pay off the water side as well as an assessment over 10 years as well. If we wouldn't do that, then they would have to be forced to pay New London Utilities all upfront for the water side. And we're giving them the option to do that in assessment as well.
okay, thanks. Any further questions for Mr. Gursky? If none, I'd look for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve and recommend to council the assessment resolution for sanitary and water lateral construction on Oshkosh Street. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Herter, to approve and recommend to council final assessment resolution for sanitary and water lateral construction on Oshkosh Street. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, approve and recommend to council contract award to PTS Contracts Inc. in the amount of $4,201,299 for the Oshkosh Street reconstruction.
okay, for this one, as you can see, we had 8 bids on the project. It is, I've never seen bids this close, even for a project that would be around $1 million, much less this big of a contract being this close. Having contractors within 18,000, 19,000, 36,000 in the first 4 bids it does show you that there's very competitive bids on this project. Just a reference, I mean, downtown was $3 million project, and the closest second bid was $150 $20,000 away from the low bid. This does have the addition, as Chad spoke of earlier, that the water portion of the contract is on here as well. But this covers all sanitary. The sanitary construction side of it, the stormwater, new inlets, additional inlets that we added. It also includes the road surface. Now, these two items here, the stormwater portion and the roadway items, being curb and gutter, all your flat work, the base, all the excavation of the old street, all that stuff falls under our qualifying for that LRIP grant. Added together, that LRIP grant pretty much covers the full cost of this in this bid format. Now, there is quantity items that could change. There are excavations below subgrade that can change. But for the most part, we're doing very well on that portion of this contract.
What was the percentage max for LRIP for this one?
90,
So out of
90,
that 90% the max.
yes. And it also has the, like I said, the inclusion of the water utility contract that came up with that total of 4.2. Are there any questions or any, yes?
Who is PTF?
PTS is a company that's been around a while. They're out of Green Bay. They have 6 crews. Asked around about them, and they did meet all pre-qualifying standards for the project. They submitted all their stuff ahead of time, just like all the contractors. I've actually heard good things about them, so as long as we don't run into anything like last year, I think we're good to go.
One interesting point too, if all the persons, if they get hit up about cost of street projects, have them look at this and look at all the information about what it costs to go into a street project, all these line items of different things and all the different individual costs for a street reconstruction project is pretty substantial.
I guess one thing I'd like just to mention is there was grumbling with downtown about city does not have to go with low bid, and just so everybody knows, we have to go with low bid when there's federal grant funding.
And as I asked Chad many times, any bid process through municipality over,
So anything over $25,000 that includes materials and labor to install it, like a street project. Anything over $25,000, we are required by state statute to go with the lowest qualified bid. Anything between $5,000 and $25,000, we have to do a class 1 notice in the paper, basically telling the public, hey, we're looking for proposals. Between $5,000 and $25,000, we can go with who we want, but you still have to notify the public by a class 1 notice, hey, we're doing this. Anything under 5,000, we do not have to notice in the paper, we can just go who we want. So anything over 25,000, you are required by state statute to go with the lowest qualified bid, even if it was somebody from the city or lived in town, you would have to go with the lowest qualified bid.
I just wanted that clarified because that was grumbling with downtown, just so anybody listening does hear it.
Yeah, your hands are tied legally, state statute, you have to take the lowest qualified bid no matter what.
Any further questions for Mr. Gursky? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve and recommend PTS construction to do the project on Oshkosh.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, seconded by Mr. Barrington to approve and recommend to council contract award to PTS Contractors INC in the amount of $4,201,299 for the Oshkosh Street reconstruction. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up, authorize the Director of Public Works to approve change orders in a total collective amount of up to $100,000 for Oshkosh Street reconstruction.
This is something that's, not so much amount wise, but, I have asked for ever since I came on board here, in 22 with the start of the Avon Lima Alliance project. All trying to, prevent any type of holdup on, things that have to be done, that between discussion between engineer, myself and contractor, identify that we must go in this direction and at what cost. Not that this is something that, well, yeah, let's just do that and it costs how much more. It doesn't go like that at all. By having that authorization, it would prevent any holdups from that construction project. Obviously, if it's a major item, it's gonna total up there in amount, and it's something that I'm gonna need the board to approve anyways. So I don't come by it lightly, and I think it's much needed on a job like this.
Any questions for Mr. Garski on that?
You've had to do this on both that project and the downtown, didn't you? And didn't the downtown, we even had to come back because it wasn't enough?
Actually, that was on the Wolf River Avenue
Okay,
where we did the
Where
utility relocate.
yeah,
and all that
okay.
concrete.
yeah.
So that one, I was authorized quite a bit. I think it was 75,000 on that project. I knew we would be close to that amount, and that's why I wanted to bring everybody up to speed. The contractor did ask for 83,755. After negotiating it down, it ended up turning out to be a change order of 53,000. So it was a $30,000 difference. It's just because I'm asking for it doesn't mean I'm automatically gonna go with what they're asking for. It becomes more of a time and material based off of what they bid on that project to begin with, so. All the rest of them actually were fortunate, and any change orders I approved were pretty much under the $20,000 mark, and with the project being, coming out ahead, there was, minus 270,000 on the 2023 project downtown, and Avon, with change of the way we did the sub base on that, came out $239,000 ahead, so.
Any further?
Unfortunately, sometimes you don't know what's underneath the street till you dig it up.
Yep. And I'm worried about quicksand. Have I heard in the past?
Unsaid it's there.
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion.
I'll make that motion to authorize the Director of Public Works to approve the change orders in a total collective amount of up to $100,000 for Oshkosh Street reconstruction.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Herder, second by Mr. Ritchie, to approve the Director of Public Works to approve change orders in the total collective amount of up to $100,000 for Oshkosh Street reconstruction. Any further questions? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is also carried. Next is approve and recommend to Council McMahon agreement for construction services for Oshkosh Street.
All right, this is pretty much a a straightforward contract like it has been in the past for construction services for this project on Oshkosh Street. It runs at around 10% of the cost of the project on our side, so if you exclude the water portion of the contract, it comes out to around 10% for the service. That's pretty standard for all engineering. And Brad said that we're better off going with this number in case we have to incorporate an extra personnel out on the street. The contractor did mention that they might want to move in a second crew at some point in time. And if you have two crews going at the same time, plus trying to keep track of, you're pretty much documenting everything that happens out there. And then if you throw laterals into the mix and other construction elements, the utility portion of it's definitely going to be the most time consuming of the whole project, and the need for all that documentation that takes place. So it's pretty crucial that we have this in place just in case we need that extra help to get this all documented during construction. Once everything slows down, all the, you get more into the flat work, the curb and gutter, when it gets to the asphalt portion, I do tend to like to be out there a lot more in that role, just because that's kind of my element, and that's what I have time for. I am not set up with a GPS or anything like instrumentation to take the elevations and everything that need to be noted during the project. So that's definitely where they come in the most.
Any further questions on this? Seeing none, I looking for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve and recommend McMahon for the agreement for the construction service on Oshkosh Street. Second.
Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Herder, to approve and recommend to council McMahon agreement for construction services for Oshkosh Street. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Next up is approve and recommend to council yard waste site agreement with the town of Muckwa.
Okay. Chad, could we go to the spreadsheet?
Is it in there?
I hope so.
This one?
There it is. Okay, I kind of want to review this before we go into both those agreements. It's a compiled 2024 data from the yard site. As you can see, why we needed a new opener, that gate open and closed keyed, that was kept track of 12,677 times. So there was quite a few visits. That's not counting all the people that entered it while it was open. Out of that usage, 74.83% were from the city, 23.46 from Muckwa, and 1.71 from Caledonia. Now, Caledonia didn't start until July, but the word did get out, and they had 26 people, residents come in and get cards for that yard site. Down in the next area, card stickers issued, just shy of 900 for the city, averaged 9.44 average gate openings per that volume. 260 cards issued to Muckwa. They came in a little bit less at 8.74, and the 26 cards averaged 12 visits apiece if you were to average it out over the cards. So if you notice the expense revenues from key cards, window stickers, that is because the initial expense, the $5 that went towards the key card, was pretty much a wash because those cards were around $5 a piece. So that's why you see that expense at $7,020. So on the revenue side for 2025, I listed as around $6,000. I'm figuring around there with a little uptick in usage, should be somewhere in that area. The DTAC contract of $12,000 was added to the expense. The gate opener for 24, which of course was approved on the capital side. But that is an expense that I like to assign because that gate is used for this purpose. The revenue brought in from Muckwa's agreement and from Caledonia's agreement in 24 are shown there, 8,400 and 2,550. An estimate of the equipment, fuel, personnel costs in 2024 was just shy of $30,000. So with the new agreements, if approved, will stay the same for Muckwa at 8,400, and the town of Caledonia will go down to 2,400 a year. They were initially signed up at $425 a month, and so over that 6 months they provided $2,550. But based on usage, even if I doubled that, doubled the cards, doubled the use number, the percentage wise worked out under $200. I do not think, not that it's not fair, but I don't think that we should provide anything under 200 just because you know, there's unassigned costs to this that maybe aren't quite accounted for, and I think that is relatively still a good rate to allow them to use the site. Based off of what I expect for expenses and the use from all that, from the city, from Muckwa, and from Caledonia. So with that, on the Muckwa side, the agreement would stay the same. All the same language. It would be $700 per month. And they were willing to go back to Jan 1 to start the contract over again because it did expire at the end of December. But to start that payment in this agreement at $700 a month. And again, if we run into any big storms or anything like that, the cost would be shared appropriately with 20% of the overall storm costs going towards Muckwa. Are there any, this and the one that I have for Caledonia are both for 2 years. If I notice anything trending way out of whack, which I do not expect because I do believe we have a good established number now that we ran this for a year. But being that there's so much going on all the time, I think a 2-year agreement is a good time window, and we could adjust from there if need be. And we'll definitely reanalyze use every year, but I would like to stick with like a 2-year contract. Does anybody have any questions?
Any further questions for Mr. Garsky? If none, looking for a motion.
So moved, Your Honor.
Motion made by Mr. Barrington, seconded by Mr. Herder to approve and recommend to council yard waste site agreement with the town of Muckley. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next, approve and recommend to council yard waste site agreement with the town of Caledonia.
Any questions with that contract?
If there's no questions, look for motion.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Herder, seconded by Mr. Ritchie to approve and recommend to council yard waste site agreement with the town of Caledonia. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Director's report, Mr. Garsky.
All right, I'll try to keep this short and sweet because of the length of this meeting. There's no service anniversaries. I do want to make mention again of the public informational meeting for the Oshkosh Street construction on February 13th at the Washington Center Senior Room at 6 o'clock p.m. Also, the garbage, the citywide garbage contract has not gone by the wayside. We Chad has had discussions with GFL. Harders has reached out to me about it as well. We're getting good input from them. I will be reaching out to Clintonville. I know they've just went through a transition where they were having opt-out options and all the issues that they've had in the past. So I'm hoping to gain a lot from them and possibly Wapaka. Actually, both garbage companies had good information of areas I could go to, different communities that recently got into the program or into programs like that for RFPs to put out for costs. Other than that, everything's been pretty quiet.
Robert, on the resolution you showed us earlier, it said that February 19th was the meeting.
That is the public hearing.
Okay,
That has to be established on that document.
okay,
The public informational meeting for the public to be informed about everything from what's gonna happen in front of my house, is the road gonna be open, how's my garbage gonna get picked up, items like that, that will be at that 13th meeting. And discussions about the cost of assessments and how that's all gonna play out.
Thank you for
yeah,
clarifying.
thanks for
those
clarifying
differences.
that. I seen that, I'm like, oh,
The public hearing is for anybody to come if they oppose the assessment. And they can be heard at that public hearing about that assessment process
That's at the council meeting.
at the council meeting on the 19th.
okay. Next would be further agenda items, and kind of went through that already with the garbage. And next is the Board of Public is the 3rd. We have no issues with that, do we? Any issues? Looking for motion adjournment.
I'd like to thank Mr. Garsky for all the work that he's put into the Oshkosh Street organization and just being very knowledgeable about everything and putting it all together that we can understand it and follow it very well and easily. So thank you for all that.
On that, looking for motion for adjournment. Motion made by Mr. Ritchie, second by Mr. Barrington for adjournment. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.